excited to have this conversation with Gwen. She's a 3-time coach of Team USA in 2006, 2017, and 2019. She was also a general manager of Team Canada women's ball hockey, and she's worked in law enforcement in her 37th year. I've personally had the privilege of playing on 2 teams under Gwen's leadership, and Team USA in 2017 and 2019 won 2 silver medals. She led the team to our first ever wins over the Czech Republic, over Slovakia, over Team Canada, which felt extra sweet in that tournament. And it was all really impressive, but what I remember most is the resiliency of the team that Gwen built in 2017 and 2019. Our first game down in 2017, we went down in our very first game to Italy at the beginning of the 3rd period, down 1-0. And it was sort of like a feeling of like anxiety a little bit and like, oh my gosh, like this is our first game, like this is a must-win game for us. We really got to kind of, we really have to win this game. And Gwen didn't allow us to panic and got us to settle down. And even as time was winding down, we still had that confidence that we could tie it up. And we did. We ended up tying it up to Italy. We ended up winning that game. And we continued that trend throughout the whole tournament. Even to the last 2 games in the semifinals, we were down 1-0 to Canada, came back and won 2-1. In the final game, we were down 1-0 and then 1-1 and then 2-1 and then 2-2 and then 3-2 and pulled our goalie and tied it up to send the Czech game into overtime. So that mental resiliency is really something that that Gwen, that stuck with me about Gwen and the way that she works with her team. So I'm really excited to be here for this. And I've also had the privilege of playing with Gwen. She's also a stellar player, both she really doesn't hold back either like on the ice or on the floor. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Gwen to talk with you all.
Great to be here. Thanks for signing up. I see some familiar faces, and I'm really happy that the USA women that are on the call tonight are supporting this, because it's something you might reflect on now after you can look back to those big tournaments. So we don't have a lot of time, and actually any kind of mental training takes years and years to perfect. And I'm not too sure how many have ever even been practicing this or have looked into it or dabbled in it, or if they have any experience. I'm not too sure, and I don't think we have time to find out. But let's assume that everyone here is starting fresh, and you will probably end up bringing up some, well, your memories will probably be triggered by some of the things I bring up. So eliminating distractions. Now, I did have a slide presentation. Unfortunately, I'm at another computer, and I just wanted to share this with you. Karen and I both laughed when I said my computer at home wasn't working, because that's a perfect distraction for anything, isn't it? You don't have a computer and you have all these people waiting for you. So I've run down to work. I'm using my work computer. I don't have a clue on how to work from here as well as I would have at home. So I'm just going to fly by the seat of my pants. And what do they call this? Expect the unexpected. And what's the next word? You have to embrace it. So here we go. All right, so just wanted to acknowledge that although we're looking really excited and happy here, there are lots of people that are struggling in this world due to the pandemic. So I just wanted to keep that in mind. But this is what I'd like you to think about. If we can't play, we're not playing as much as we can, we're not training the way we did before. Some of us feel a little panicked. Some athletes are thinking, I'm losing time. I'm actually getting older. So when's my next competition, in 2022? Okay, well, we have some time here to actually set up our mental training program. So having said that, I wanted to just go right into the various situations that we are distracted while we're playing or before we're playing. There's 2 types. There's internal distractions and there's external distractions. So we are going to cover that quickly, and then I have 2 techniques that I'll share with you today to help you practice in the areas that you feel you need to. And the reason why I say that when I say you is because my approach to training athletes is athlete-centered, meaning I don't train the whole team per se. We work with individuals so that they can better and improve their, not shortcomings, but their areas that they need to work on. So some of the examples that I wanted to ask some of you to share that earlier, but we don't have time. So an external example of a distraction is when we can't transition from our previous engagement, whether it's work, school, just life, and we carry that over into our play, and we don't know how to transition. We don't have this plan or this something that we've practiced many times before to have a quick transition. So that's one example. Jokingly, I say this for the USA members on the call here tonight, Team USA. We'll go right to the arena. What about the Czech fans and the noise that they were yelling from the stands, or the chanting and that constant chanting that was going on? If that didn't rent space in your head for a few minutes, it certainly had some effect on you. And if you tried to ignore it, it's unfortunate, but the rest of your team are probably bothered by it too, and they're also off their game for a slight moment or two. And maybe some are just still watching the stands. They are not thinking about what they're supposed to be doing on their next shift. Another distraction that, believe it or not, can be very it's something that should be addressed, is coaches. Coaches can be distractions for many teammates or players. If you have a coach that makes negative comments or uses some language that triggers you, those are things that you need to prepare for or have a conversation with. And one of the ways to do that would be to say, are you aware that when you say that or when you say this, you negatively impact myself or some other players? And so these are things that you might just want to ignore. And there are techniques that I'll show you that you can do that. But if you want to address it, that's even more mature for your team. Staff members that say something contrary to the team strategy. This can be a distraction. When there's pressure and you're playing a game and it's a tight game, and you're trying to stay focused on the task at hand, and you're trying to play the next shift, and then there's a distraction or a comment that causes it triggers you. That in itself, unfortunately, can take you off your game for a few seconds. So you need a technique, or you need something to help you get back on track. I don't want to say anything bad because I just love Manoa Lacasse. She's an official that's been in the ball hockey world for many years, and she's very well respected. My take on officials, in whether they make a call that's against your team or they miss a call, my strategy and this has been for years, I don't make that part of my game. It's a call that's made, and now it's next play. And this is a huge distraction for a lot of people. They become very dramatic. They waste their energy. They affect their teammates, and they're not thinking about what's the next play. And so there are ways to try to work yourself around that. Now, I know with captains, they might have to have a respectful conversation with the officials, but the rest of the team should be understanding that they'll take care of it. Instead of taking out an entire team, maybe maybe the captain or the assistants are the only ones that are tied up. I have to apologize for the background noise. That's my work colleagues. So going back to the officials, it can be a real problem for some people. And sorry about that. I'm at a police department. So negative behavior of a teammate. Okay, they may not be aware. They may not be aware that they are causing, or let's say, they aren't aware of their negative behavior because no one's either addressed it or we've learned to just ignore it. However, if you just ignore it, and down the road there's the game that counts the most, and they act up, you have to consider how that might take your team off their game, or a player off their game. So you might want to deal with that ahead of time. And you bring these things up ahead of time with your team, and you have these discussions for this reason alone. Let's see here. This is an old school one. We've all been on the playground where we've been heckled, we've been trash talked. One of the things that to this day players don't understand is, you think that you have to trash talk them back. Well, they're getting you off your game. The best way, on my mind, in my view, to deal with trash talking is to just look right through that person. Don't say a word, because then you look like a machine. You look like a robot. You look like the Terminator. You don't even acknowledge that they're whatever they're saying. And so if you can't do that, then you will have to use another technique to try to help you refocus. Because I can tell you, I have had a couple of things said to me that threw me off my game. There's no question about it. It can happen. Loud music. Remember, loud music is great if everyone likes it. So be very, very considerate of your teammates. Sometimes people use their own earbuds. They do that beforehand, but then they want to take them out so that they can enjoy the company of their teammates. And maybe they'll be talking about hockey and preparing. So keep that in mind, that can actually be a problem. Now, what do you do about the music that's being played in an arena? Is there any chance, any choice of that? Probably not. But I do remember one time when I was distracted, somebody was playing some music that was absolutely not, it wasn't energetic, or it wasn't the type of music that would pump you up. It was the type of music that actually was an embarrassment. And why were they playing that kind of music for the women's game, and that they had all the great music for the men's game? So if you're going to look at it like that, you are not on your game. You are totally off your game. You're not even thinking about what you should be doing on your next shift. So there's a way you can try to avoid that too. I don't know if you can imagine this or not, but some championships have been won or lost because of an injury to an athlete. One of the best case scenarios that I have is it's a 0-0 game going into the final period, and the opposition's player goes down with a severe leg injury. The stick is impaled in the leg, showing flesh. So that's pretty scary, actually. That causes some people to go into shock. Some people they're not they're reacting in a way that it's the old fight, flight, freeze, or flop syndrome. And this is where a captain or your coaching staff have to pull the team together with something like that, because goals are scored after that incident. It could be against you, or you could score against them. It's however your team has planned to deal with that. Think about it. If you're the player that went down injured, wouldn't you want your players to keep focused on the game and finish it off? Especially if you've already made a plan with your team ahead of time, saying, all right, if somebody gets injured here, just remember, we have people who will take care of them. We have those who will follow up. They will take care of you. Don't worry. And then you can carry on playing the game. And once again, can happen to the other team as well. All right, so some of the internal distractions that can take place. We talked about it in the beginning in the intro, dwelling on a past mistake. Okay, that takes a lot of work, and you will need some techniques on how to deal with that. Negative self-talk. Whatever you're telling your brain, that's exactly what's going to happen. So you want to be able to adjust that and change that. Low confidence. Well, you're going to have to find ways to deal with low confidence, and I do have a suggestion on that. Needing control. Well, in the game of hockey, there's no control. You can only control your attitude, your focus, your effort, and your commitment to the game. That's really all you can focus. And we have an acronym for that with Team USA, and it's called CAFE. CAFE is CAFE, and it's commitment, attitude, focus, and effort. Okay. Looking for the perfect play, that doesn't happen either. And if you continually try to strive for the perfect play, you're trying too hard. And that's a whole other area to discuss. Another thing that can be a distraction is comparing yourself. Do you find yourself in the warm-up looking over at the other team at their players? Well, what are you doing? You're not working on your warm-up. You're distracted. You're not paying attention to what you need to do to be ready to go. Or maybe to pay some attention to your own teammates. Maybe you need to give them a few taps. Maybe you need to go to your goalie and give them a couple of taps on the pad. Focus and keep your eyes and your preparation to your team and what's going to benefit you for your performance. And I'd have another one here called needing others to approve of your performance. So that's a fear of failure. So if you're not hearing, some of us aren't hearing someone on our team saying you're playing great or you've had a great game, you're profoundly affected by it. So then that's another area that you might want to explore as something that you need to find a solution for. I think that's pretty well it. So once again, I said that this is really important that when you're with a team that you have some sort of a get together to discuss these types of situations, and you might come up with your own. I was really hoping that we could have asked a number of you on here to give us some examples. And if any of you have those examples that I didn't cover and you have a couple of minutes or seconds or so, please type it into the chat area so that we can jot that down. When you go through this process, you're going to learn a lot about your teammates too, aren't you? You're going to learn about yourself. And then let's say one of your teammates has a bit of an awkward behavior. And I don't know how to describe that, but maybe let's say they like banging their stick on the board. As long as you all know why they're doing it, then you can ignore it. But if they keep doing it and you can't figure out what they're doing and why they're doing it, that's a distraction. And I think that there's some other behaviors that you probably have experienced that you can think of that might be a good example of making sure you address that with the player. Let's see here. Another thing too is if, let's say you're in a really great back and forth game and it's really, once again, we see it's a tight game, but and all of a sudden one of your teammates pulls a stunt that it's such a negative thing that it throws you completely off. Just think about how that affects, if it affected you, how did it affect everybody else on the team? You won't be able to address it then because you have a game to play. So you have to really find it, you have to find it in yourself to keep focused on what's next, what's up, what's next play. And then of course, after the game, at some point you might want to deal with it. All right, so I think that if you discuss this, you'll also learn from your teammates that they don't have the tools. They don't have any method to be able to learn how to refocus. So this is where I'd like to share with you two techniques. There's two techniques. One's called the 7 R's technique, and then there's the stoplight technique. And a stoplight, actually, the STOP is an acronym for what I'm going to share with you. So we probably, because I couldn't show you my screen, I will definitely make an effort somehow to have this printed out so that you can have it. So if you don't really have, if you want to write it down, fine. Otherwise, we'll somehow get it to you. So there's the 7 R techniques is recognize, release, relax, replay, regroup, refocus, and ready. So when you recognize the mistake or the error or the distraction that it's occurred, then that's half the battle right there. So you want to release it. You want to release it by parking it, and we've talked about that where you have to just ignore it. You could have a cue word, and I use a vulgar type of cue word, but you can use bleep it and focus, where you're going to flush that thing down the toilet, but you're not going to hold on to it. Okay, so you might have to close your eyes and say, all right, that's it, that's done, and then move on. And then you have to try to relax because it does fire you up a little bit. And sometimes it might be it's something that you have to learn to do. As soon as you feel that yourself becoming quite anxious about or upset about something, you need to go to breathing. So in between your shifts, why would you be doing anything other than preparing for the next shift? Or why wouldn't you be preparing for the next shift? So part of that would be taking deep breaths. And I did mention that some people have used this before where they've tapped their stick on the boards, but that's something that everyone else on the team is going to know. They're doing it not because they're angry. They're doing it as a cue or some sort of a technique to help them snap back. You can replay the mistake in your mind. This would be afterwards, of course, but if you want to do it on the bench, and just visualize yourself in that same situation again on how you want to do it. And so you'll be ready for it for the next time. Regrouping. All right. This is body language is everything. If you're going to come off the floor or off the ice rink with your head down and your slumped over shoulders, you're actually telling the other team that you're not very happy. And some of them actually go like this. Oh, this is good. We know that so-and-so is not very happy right now. And it affects your teammates. How many here watch volleyball? I use this analogy all the time. Every single play in volleyball, it doesn't matter if they score or they win a point or not. They all huddle and they all give themselves a high five and they just cheer each other on. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a win or a loss. They still give each other the props, and it's physiologically healthy for them. And it's going to help them in the game. Keep that. So refocus by talking to yourself, let it go, and try to get it together for your next shift. The final thing is if you've done those first steps to 6, you're now in control of your emotions, because that's really what it comes down to in a lot of situations is emotional control, and in trying to keep your thoughts in check and having a positive attitude about it and embracing these types of challenges that come your way. And then you're ready to go back out there and do it again and do it. And hopefully you're doing it better than you did prior to that. So that was the 7 R's technique. There's another technique called the stop light technique. And I said that the stop is an acronym. So the stop stands for, the S, of course, is for stop, and T is for think, O is for organize, and P is for proceed. So when you're talking negatively, you have to say it in your mind right away, stop. And you have to be very, you must ensure that this is something that you don't want to happen again. To stop whatever you're thinking in the negative way, that is. Then your second part of the stop is the T for think. So I know that in games, we're not there to think. Games are for playing and practice is for thinking. So if you're practicing and you do make mistakes, maybe you can practice this technique in those practices. But in a game, you're really, really, what you should be thinking to yourself is and I call it a mistake, no matter what happens, believe it or not, most people don't know you've done that. I mean, I know that if you miss the ball and it's obvious and it bounces on the opponent's stick and then they end up scoring, okay, so that was close to the scoring goal and it sort of looked like you made a mistake. But majority of mistakes out on the floor, the game's too dynamic and fast to keep up. The game is full of mistakes. Each team makes mistakes. So just keep playing and don't worry about it. And then organize, that's for the O. So this is the planning. How would you prefer to act in a situation where something's gone wrong? You have to have a plan. So this is how you learn, and it's recognizing what's happened. Proceed is basically giving yourself short sentences or key words that help you refocus on the task at hand. So these are the 2 techniques that I was hoping to share with you tonight, and I know that you didn't have anything to follow along with, and I apologize for that. If you're the type that can stay focused and then you add some grit to that, you will be known as a mentally tough competitor. That's what kind of a reputation you will have. And you're the type of athlete, when you can keep focused, you're going to be the one that maintains that game face. And yeah, okay, so you see the odd player smile and carry on. That's fine. There's a lot of different things that some players are very capable of doing when they're competing at their best, but that takes years of practice. But I have to say that the top athletes, they actually have scripts, and I'm not too sure. I can see a few people on my screen. How many? I know Karen Doria knows what scripts are. I know that, let's see who else is on here. Alessandra, Hassan would know, and so will Cherie. So scripts are, all high performance athletes have scripts, and they have an actual framework to work with. So I don't have access to showing you, but this is a person's script. Okay, this is an athlete's script, and in that script they will have some things they need to do for refocusing because they know there's certain things that might distract them. And then there's other athletes who don't have to write that into the script, because guess what? They've already pretty well figured this out. This is something that they've been incorporating for years in their game. So to give you an example, and the reason why we have scripts is because, let's say we talked about the transition from your home life or your school life or your work life, and you want to transition your brain from that to now game face. You can actually review your script, and when you review your script, you actually physiologically start to feel it, because you're now taking your body into all of what you're going to do out on the floor or on the rink. There's your pregame script of things that you would do. So this one athlete wanted to share that before she even plays the day, she has a game day evening. So the day before, she talks about her meals, her sleep, and how key that is. No less than 8 hours. And she'll do walking, light exercise. And then in her mind, she visualizes forechecking in the O zone, D zone, just all of the things that she needs to go over or to rehearse. She might even draw them out so that she has them in her head, and then she might even visualize them again. The pregame, if it's a late game, let's say on the evening, let's say an afternoon or 6 o'clock game, she's even written in here that she might even want a nap or may not. She talks about her diet. She talks about how she prepares herself at the rink, and all of the details that help her get her mind to the game. She says, game time, here are my strengths, and she puts down all of her strengths, and then she has an area of what I focus on. She has an area about confidence and what helps her prepare and bring her back memories from past performances, and maybe some of her idols that she likes to watch play hockey. And once again, at the very end of a script, it's a work in progress. It's something that you want to improve on, and you want to continue to develop as you mature as an athlete. And you know what? This isn't just for high performance athletes. This can be for us weekend warriors, because we all have lives and we're running from our work life to the rink. So we want to be able to, in a very short time, have ourselves at that point we're ready to play the game. All right, I think that's it for the scripts, and that's a whole another area. But I wanted you to be able to recognize that, or at least understand that it's very important to have all of your mental training incorporated into your script eventually. Karen, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to open up for questions. I think we have about 10 minutes or so left. And so you've given us a lot to kind of think about. So I was curious, just what are people wondering about, questions for Gwen, or examples of, times when maybe you got distracted and wanted to add that to the conversation. And feel free to just unmute yourself and hop in.
Mr. B, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, basically, I came to this to figure out, to watch what bothers people, because I'm real interested in that. Like, if I was on the bench coaching and I want to know what's bothering a certain person. I mean, I can read goalies pretty good by their body language and stuff like that, they're just easy. But what really gets under people's skin the fastest and the easiest, and how could I use that on the bench as a weapon against them? And that's what I want. That's what I came to listen for that. So it's pretty much, you got to watch the other players and, okay, geez, that little tap on the back of the knee, I still really didn't like that. Let's do that some more. Go that route and see what happens. Yeah, I laugh. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know my style.
You like to use your butt for everything. You just stick your butt in everybody's
That's right.
butt, everything. And people don't know how to react to that. Like, what's going on here?
That's right. That's right. If they want to play with the big girls, that's what they have to deal with.
Gwen, we have 2 questions in the chat. One is, how do you get over a devastating loss in a championship game where circumstances were out of your control?
Great question. So first of all, I know that this sounds really simplistic, but it's just a game. And yeah, it's big stakes, but the way Team USA approached the World Championships, this is just another game. I know that they'll agree with that. I know that some of them will probably say, no, I didn't feel like that. But you win some, you lose some. There's lots of losers, and there's only one winner. You have to have that confidence, and if you have confidence going into playing every single game that you whether it's a rec game or a big championship game, just go in and give it the best that you can. And you're right, it was the circumstances were out of your control in this particular question. So nothing to be ashamed about. Just lay it all out there and leave it on the ice and leave it on the floor, and be a good sport and should be a fierce competitor regardless, win, lose, draw.
Thanks, Gwen. Our second question in the chat is, if a teammate is down, how do you react in order to help your teammates?
That's a good one. So that's very similar to the one that I talked about with an injury. You have a plan ahead of time with your team that when somebody goes down, there are people who are responsible for looking after that. And your captains or even a leader on your team will have to pull everyone together and keep focused so that eventually when the play resumes, your head's in the game, because that first shift after a delay like that can be a killer. As a matter of fact, I said, we scored in a Canadian championship, scored 2 goals right away after an injury because our team was ready and the other team wasn't. And that was it.
Thanks, Gwen. We've got a couple
Let's see.
as well.
How could you get over any team drama that is happening? Also, how can you get over your teammates fighting, setting a negative vibe on the team? Yeah, you know what? That one is a tough one. Team USA and any teams that I belong to or I'm a part of, we always teach everyone the 5 stages of a team. And you have to educate your members as to how their behavior is affecting the team. And if they want to try to if they want to continually break the rules, but the expectation of the team, then that's just an issue that you have to deal with. That's conflict. But you also have to find out what is bothering this person, because that's another thing that we don't think about is why are they acting out? What is going on with that person? And it's usually something outside of the game. And believe it or not, some people can't stop. They bring baggage from their personal life out onto the floor, out on it, and to their team, and that's an unfortunate thing. This is a huge, it's a very big question that has a multifaceted approach on how to deal with it. But I'd say that the approach we use with Team USA is important, and everyone buys into it, and that's the key.
Gwen, there's 2 more questions in the chat there, if you could see them.
Can you?
Yes, we've got one is, how do you actively work to improve your self-confidence while playing in a competitive field so that you're not playing in a self-defeating way? Gwen, you're on mute.
That's a pretty complex, multifaceted question. Perhaps that person could give us an email, and I'll try to connect with them and answer that question.
The other question, Gwen, is any tips on practicing these skills while we're pretty sidelined during COVID? Work, family, will that help to get back into game mode once the world is, what will help to get back into game mode once the world is back in order?
That's a good question. Once again, in the very beginning of this presentation, I think what a lot of teams and athletes are worried about is, the question is, when will we be back again? Some of us had some goals to go off to tournaments, championships, and those aren't happening. And some people panic. They're aging. They are worried, like the U19s, they're going to age out by the time the tournament comes around, and that's too bad. So I feel bad for them. But I understand that practicing your skills, there's lots of ways you can do that away from any rink or gym. And there's a lot of stuff online, and it's going to be individual because everyone here has their own areas that they need to work on. Mental training is probably one of the areas that you could really work on yourself. And you can go online, you can find different websites where you can access some of their programs. I don't really want to promote too many people, but I can give you one, for instance, who's been in business for 30 years, Dr. Patrick Cohn, C-O-H-N. And he has lots of focused athlete training programs, confident athlete, you name it, whatever area you think that you are not doing very well in, you should take an opportunity and invest in that. Maybe you want to share it with somebody, go in on it together, and you can share it. I don't think they're too much money, but I believe that they would be well worth your time. And I'm not going to call this dead time, but I would say make use of this time to prepare for when it is time to go back to playing. And once again, who knows when that's going to happen. Yeah, Dr. Patrick Cohn, that's right.
Thanks, Gwen. We've got time for maybe one more question. What else is on people's minds?
I just want to say thanks, Gwen, for and Karen and Alice for putting on this amazing Zoom meeting for tonight. And all you first responders out there, thank you for your service. It's appreciated. And stay safe and stay healthy.
Thanks, Manon. Awesome. So I think that's actually a pretty good segue. Gwen, if you do have a few more minutes, maybe we can just stay on for a couple if anyone has additional questions after we log off. But I'm going to share my screen just one more time really quickly. Just in closing, I just wanted to share a little bit of a look back over the past few months. We've had this speaker series going since August. We had Nikki Nozio, a personal trainer and strength and conditioning coach, on transitioning back to play. That was kind of when we were having that first release where we thought, people were starting to play again. In September, we talked with Larissa Cernis on sports nutrition, who's a clinical dietitian. In October, in place of our Oktoberfest, we had Trivia Fest with Lindsay, formerly Bitler, Lindsay Maychuk, and had a blast doing that. And then we just did our mental training work with Gwen. December, we're taking off. Have a wonderful holiday. Stay safe, whatever your holidays look like this year. For January and beyond, we're thinking of some possible team challenges and some more speakers. So I'm hoping that you'll help us think through who else you would like to learn from, and other ways we can get together safely. And what's been really fun about these is just how we can get together all across, North America and all that. So thank you all for this evening. It'd be really helpful if you could fill out this Google form. It's very, very quick. It gives us just a sense of how tonight went, and then again, a chance for you to share other speakers that you're interested in hearing from, other topics that you're interested in learning more about through these speakers series. Once you've done that, you're welcome to sign off and have a really wonderful rest of your evening. If you do have more questions, like I mentioned, Gwen and I can stay on for a few more minutes to get your questions answered. And just thank you all. I really appreciate you all jumping on, and such a great community we have here. And it's great to connect with you all.